Imagine an empire so vast it stretched across 3 continents. From the deserts of Arabia to the snowy gates of Vienna, it held the world in its grip for over 6 centuries.
This was the Ottoman Empire, a superpower that defined the history of the modern world. But every sun that rises must eventually set.
How did a small warrior tribe become the rulers of the world? And more importantly, how did such a giant collapse into dust? This is the story of the rise and fall of the Ottomans. Our story begins in the year 1299. The land we now call Turkey was a patchwork of warring tribes. Among them was a leader named Osman. Osman was a visionary. Legend says he had a dream of a great tree growing from his chest, covering the world with its shade. He took this as a sign from God to build a dynasty. Osman and his followers, the Ottomans, were expert horsemen. They started small, taking towns from the weakening Byzantine Empire right on their doorstep. They weren't just raiders, they were empire builders. They captured the city of Bursa and made it their capital. The nomads began to settle down. To expand, they needed a professional army. They created the Janissaries. These were elite soldiers, feared across Europe, loyal only to the Sultan. By the mid-1300s, the Ottomans did something bold. They crossed the sea and set foot in Europe. The kings of the West began to get nervous. They swept through the Balkans. In 1389, at the Battle of Kosovo, they defeated the Serbian army. The path to the heart of Europe was opening up. But there was one prize that remained out of reach: Constantinople, the ancient capital of the Roman Empire. Its walls were legendary. No one could break them.
Enter Sultan Mehmed II. He was only 21 years old. He vowed that he would either take the city or the city would take him.
Mehmed didn't just bring soldiers, he brought science. He hired engineers to build the largest cannons the world had ever seen to smash the unbreakable walls.
When the sea route was blocked by a giant chain, Mehmed did the impossible. He ordered his ships to be rolled over the hills on greased logs, dropping them right into the enemy harbor. On May 29, 1453, the cannons roared. The walls crumbled. The Ottomans stormed the city. The Byzantine Empire was dead.
Mehmed rode into the city and renamed it Istanbul. He didn't destroy it. He made it the jewel of his new empire. The Ottomans were now a world power.
Istanbul became the center of the world. It controlled the trade routes between East and West. If you wanted silk or spices, you had to deal with the Ottomans.
Fast forward to 1520. The empire reaches its peak under Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent. In the West, they called him Magnificent. At home, they called him the Lawgiver.
Suleiman reformed the legal system. He believed that justice was the foundation of power. The empire wasn't just strong, it was organized and wealthy beyond imagination.
Their navy dominated the Mediterranean Sea. From Algiers to Athens, the Ottoman flag waved over the waters. But Suleiman wanted more. He marched to Vienna, the heart of Europe. But the weather turned against him. Rain and mud bogged down his heavy cannons. He had to turn back. Despite the retreat, this was the golden age. Architecture, poetry, and art flourished. They built mosques that still stand as wonders of engineering today. But within this golden palace, the seeds of decline were being planted. After Suleiman, the sultans stopped leading armies. They stayed inside the palace. A system called the cage was introduced. Potential heirs were locked away in apartments to prevent civil war. But this meant when they became sultan, they had no experience to rule. The world outside was changing too. European explorers discovered the Americas and sea routes around Africa. They didn't need the Ottoman land routes anymore. the money stopped flowing.
In 1683, the Ottomans tried to take Vienna again. It was a disaster. A massive European coalition crushed them. This was the turning point. The expansion had stopped.
For the next 2 centuries, the empire began a long, slow retreat. They lost Hungary, then the Balkans, piece by piece. Europe was going through the Industrial Revolution. They had factories and modern weapons. The Ottomans were stuck in the past, refusing to modernize until it was too late. By the 1800s, the world called the Ottoman Empire the sick man of Europe. The European powers were just waiting for it to die so they could divide up the land. They tried to reform. They built railways, modernized the army, and changed laws. But the empire was too diverse. Different nationalities wanted their own countries, not an Ottoman ruler. Nationalism tore the empire apart from the inside. Greece, Bulgaria, Romania, they all fought for independence and won. In the early 1900s, a group called the Young Turks took power. They wanted to save the empire, but they made a fatal mistake. When World War I broke out in 1914, they sided with Germany. It was a gamble to regain their lost glory. It was a gamble they would lose. They fought bravely. At Gallipoli, they stopped the British and French invasion against all odds. A commander named Mustafa Kemal shone as a hero here. But the war was too big. They were fighting Russia in the snow and the British in the scorching deserts of Arabia. The Arab tribes rebelled against them. By 1918, the war was lost. Istanbul was occupied by foreign troops. The Sultan was nothing more than a puppet. The victors drew a map to carve up the empire. They planned to leave the Turks with almost nothing. But Mustafa Kemal, the hero of Gallipoli, refused to accept this. He gathered the people in the heartland of Anatolia and started a war of independence. Against impossible odds, they pushed the invading armies out. They abolished the Sultanate. In 1922, the last Sultan quietly boarded a British ship and left. The 600-year-old Ottoman dynasty was officially over. In 1923, the Republic of Turkey was founded. A new modern nation rose from the ashes of the empire. Today, the Ottoman legacy is everywhere, in the food we eat, the coffee we drink, and the skyline of Istanbul. Their architects influenced the world. Their tolerance for different religions, for a time, was a model for governance. But their fall also drew the borders of the modern Middle East, creating conflicts that we are still dealing with today. The Ottomans showed us that no empire lasts forever. Power shifts, technology changes, and the world moves on. It makes you wonder, looking at our world today, what will history say about us in 600 years? If you enjoyed this journey through history, please hit that like button and subscribe. Let me know in the comments which empire should we cover next.